So this is not the typical kind of content I do. This might not get that many views, but this is something I've been intending to do for a long time. A series of videos about the entire history of this land, that we call Chicagoland, even throughout the broader state of Illinois, and everything that's contributed to the development of this urban center. So I originally wanted to start with DuSable, but then I was like, you know what, why start there? There's a ton of history before that. I'm going to start as far back as anybody knows on how to go. You know what I'm saying? As far as people that settled this region, so people can know all the way from the very beginning that we know about to the present day how things got to be the way that they are today. Like, one thing is always a continuation of the next. You can't separate any event out of the events that preceded it. So the oldest civilization that we know about through archaeology, that inhabited the region that we know as the state of Illinois today, was a culture that we now call the Mississippian culture. This was a name given to it by archaeologists. We don't know the actual name because this civilization did not keep written records. And they had inhabited not just the state of Illinois, they'd inhabited like a wide region in this continent. Their civilization was gone by the time Europeans got here, and all of this is really known through archaeology. So their biggest settlement, okay, and I believe the biggest settlement of any people north of Mexico in the Americas, in North America, I'm sorry, was created by this Mississippian culture at a site that's now called Cahokia Mounds. Now, this is one of the 24 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It doesn't get a lot of attention, and not a lot of people know about it, which is surprising because this site has the largest earthen structures of any place north of Mexico, and in the Western Hemisphere. And it is really like just an unbelievably rich historic site. There's an interpretation center down there that's pretty much like a quasi-museum to kind of give people information about the area and the civilization and what they were doing there. So if you go down to Collinsville, Illinois, between Collinsville and East St. Louis, you will find this Cahokia Mounds site. The site used to be a city. It was an ancient city that reached its peak, I believe, around 1000 AD, like 1000 to 1200 AD, somewhere in that time frame. Although the city probably started to be developed before that. And at this site are 80 earthen mounds that are man-made. Now, at one time, there were probably 120 of these. And there's a structure called Woodhenge, which is similar to the European Stonehenge, but this was basically a solar calendar, and it consists of these wooden poles that were kind of, like I said, just meant to chart like the harvest seasons and the year and stuff like that. And it's surprisingly accurate, and there were actually a series of these structures that were built over time, and every time a new one was built, the number of wooden poles was increased by 12. What the significance of that 12 is, we don't know. We don't know what language they spoke, okay, but this group of people built these earthen mounds for a lot of different functions. There's mounds of earth that were burial sites. There's mounds of earth that were meant to raise homes, like the homes of nobility and chieftains. It had functions that, our archaeologists are just speculating about this stuff. So one thing, they did probably practice human sacrifice based on what we know from archaeology, because the chief, he's buried in one of these structures with the bones of like numerous young women nearby him. And we know that, a lot of cultures in the ancient world did practice human sacrifice. Obviously, like the Aztecs, they did that. A lot of people in the Middle East did that. People all over used to do that. It was a pretty widespread ancient practice. But, based on what the archaeology hints at, there was probably, like I said, a noble class, a chief who was considered the brother of the sun, according to their religion. And, he was basically seen as like higher than the other people. And they would carry this earth, archaeologists think, in baskets on their back to build these earthen structures to like raise his home, to, create these mounds, which had whatever significance they gave them. And like I said, they didn't keep any written records, so we don't know exactly why these things were made, but there's pretty obvious reasons for some of the stuff. Now, at one point, there was a wooden stockade that they made Again, it's nothing but speculation about why that thing was constructed, but they had all different types of structures. What we think were bathhouses, like steam rooms to kind of like relax and stuff. There's thatched huts where people were living. There were roads that are still there today, okay, that they made. These were planned cities. So they weren't just the houses weren't just randomly built. They were built in a planned framework so that the city would be organized and have like a play area, a living area, an area for the chief, and this kind of stuff. So it's a pretty impressive spot. It's down by Collinsville, Illinois, the Mississippian culture. This is the first civilization that we know that inhabited the area that we now know as the state of Illinois. So, there's a lot of information actually about this on the internet. And if you ask most Illinoisans about Cahokia Mounds, most people don't even know about it, like had never heard of it. You know what I'm saying? And this is one of the most, I would say, significant heritage sites in North America, if not the most, okay, north of Mexico. And what's interesting is, this city was located strategically at the conjunction of rivers, which could provide transportation, water, and irrigation and stuff. And these people had mastered the art of agriculture in corn, which probably allowed them to expand and kind of put down roots and stuff like that, because a lot of Native American societies were hunter-gatherer societies, which, caused them to have to move constantly and often brought them into conflict with other hunter-gatherer tribes. But Cahokia was not the name of the people that inhabited that region at that time. Cahokia is the name of the Native American tribe that was associated with that area in name at the time of European contact. Okay, so that's a totally different tribe. Okay, but as far as like DNA evidence on the skeletal remains, I don't know too much about if they've ever tried to do anything like that. They may not have disturbed, the bones in that way yet, but that'd be interesting for me to know. They built a lot of like sculptures and stuff like that, but they're not lifelike realistic. You know what I'm saying? They're kind of like artwork, so we don't know exactly how they would have depicted themselves. It's pretty interesting though, man. The brother or the son, the chief, sacrificing the young women to possibly accompany him to the afterlife and stuff. It's a pretty interesting society. I wish they had kept written records so we could know more, but they didn't. The construction of those mounds most likely took hundreds of years, with people just carrying dirt on their backs. And a lot of cultures in the ancient world built pyramid-like structures. Okay, this was in the Middle East, Mexico, Egypt, other parts of Africa, all over the ancient world, you see these pyramid-like structures. It's an obvious way to go as far as building a structure, in ancient times, because of just the logistical ease of it as far as support and stuff like that. But it also had religious significance for a lot of cultures, imitating the rays of the sun and things of that nature. So what happened to them? How did they die out? Well, one theory is that the growing season was getting shorter, so the food shortages. Another one was that an overdependence on corn in the diet led to malnutrition, possibly wars. They were traveling far distances to trade with other peoples. They found substances and minerals and things like that were not available in that region, even back at that time, that had been sourced from other regions far away. So they were definitely going to far reaches of the country, what would eventually become the United States, to basically get things and then bring them back there to make jewelry and stuff like that. So could have been something involved with that, but ultimately nobody knows. Now, genetically, the Mississippians are considered to have been, or assumed to have been, the ancestors of the Native American tribes that were here at the time of European contact. And by the way, I should mention, some of the Spaniards did have contact with Mississippians, like in the 14th, 15th centuries, down in the southeast. Okay, to my knowledge, there was none in the Illinois region, but like down in the southeast, they did. But the tribes that are considered to be descended from the Mississippians are the Alabama, the Appalachee, the Caddo, the Chickasaw, the Catawba, the Choctaw, the Muskogee. Guys, I'm probably going to butcher all these names. The Guale, the Hitchiti, the Ho-Chunk, the Huama, Kansa, Missouria, Mobilian, Natchez, Osage, Quapaw, Seminole, Tunica, Biloxi, and Yamasee and the Yuchi tribes. So anybody that has any of that in them, might be a descendant of the Mississippian peoples. So pretty interesting, man. Cahokia Mountains. I'm going to keep on going probably with the videos. This is just the first episode about the history of Illinois and Chicago. But yeah, the Mississippian people, they were the first ones that we know of to inhabit this land. It's your boy Windy City Report. I'm out.